Hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor, coming to you from island number 2 on the Book Club archipelago, where we built a replica of Cape Town, South Africa. But then we ran out of money. But at least we got the Table Mountain there in the corner. If the camera could just sweep over there, it was quite expensive. Our prop department was struggling to get this made. Our guest today is Dr. Karina M. Szczurek, author, scholar, publisher via her own small press, Caravan Press. She's originally from Poland. She fell in love with South Africa and with one of the giants of South African literature, Andre Brink. She married Andre at the age of 27 when he was already 69. They were married for 10 years until Andre's untimely death in 2015. And today we discuss, among other things, Karina's wonderful book, You Made Me Possible, the love letters of her and Andre. Actually, they're emails, but I guess the subtitle "Love Emails." That I'm glad they didn't use that. So we're here in front of a big Victorian, nice Victorian house, old house with a little inscription plaque. Before I go in, I want to read this. Here it says, "Our journey continues. May the skies be generous with light." And that is the last sentence in Karina's book, The Fifth Mrs. Brink, which we also will be talking about. Let's open the doors. Let's go inside. And inside, we have, and you can explore this later when you visit, whoever watches this on YouTube. It's a bunch of e-readers here on board with Andre Brink's several books. I have to verify how many novels he actually wrote. I think is definitely 30, if not more. And here on the wall here is Rudolph. Now Rudolph has special significance for our guest today, so we had to put him in the proper frame. It's a gold frame, so if you're not into gold, then who cares? Because Rudolph deserves gold. Whole bunch of books in here, whole bunch of cats. Oh my God, it's full house today. Amazing. Hello and welcome everyone. Hello cats. Hello cat lady here on the sofa, and our guest Karina Magdalena Szczurek is here. Welcome, Karina. How are you?
It is so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much. I know that we are in Second Life, but in my first life, the space doesn't look that much different.
Yeah, you posted a photo and it's hilarious with the fireplace and everything. So you are embodied. You're parallel in two places that are very similar. Is this a little
Yes, and
weird?
it is a little bit weird. And when we communicated before, I told you that I feel like a technological dinosaur. So being here feels very adventurous for somebody like myself.
I mean, I onboard newbies and especially authors quite frequently, and I have to say that you didn't seem like a technological dinosaur to me. You tackled the complex camera settings. You're able to look around and communicate here in this virtual world full of cats and dragons and whoever else we have here in the audience. Well, we have a lot of humans, but in the back here we actually also have. I want to give a shout out to Pantera, who is from your homeland of Poland, and who advised me how to pronounce your name and to make sure that I don't mispronounce it, because your name,
And that I don't end up as soup.
yes, and your name has to do before we start, because I like to ask that question. The avatar, it kind of has to do with your name, right?
Yes, so the avatar is a szczurek. Szczur in Polish is a rat, and the suffix ek just makes it a small rat. So I just grew up always thinking of myself as this little rat, and I live with cats, so I live dangerously.
Now you are a real big cat. Um, Also welcome our in-world folks. Also welcome the folks watching on YouTube. So I will be monitoring YouTube as usual. If you have questions, um, post them there and don't hesitate to cut and paste and be, relentless because maybe I missed it and maybe it passes by. So no problem if I don't pick up your question. It's nothing against you. Maybe the conversation goes elsewhere, or maybe I didn't see it. So please cut and paste it again. Um, now, I read your love letters between you and Andre. That's the latest book, You Make Me Possible. It's here on the table, and they're just absolutely amazing. And they're just over the course of a few months. And we'll talk about that. So, and I want to talk about your work, but we need to briefly set the scene. Um, because Andre is part of your life. Can you briefly explain to people who don't know who Andre Brink was, who was he?
Wow, you are going to put me now on the spot. To briefly explain who Andre was is quite difficult because he really was an exceptional human being and an exceptional writer. I remember once, and I think this is quite accurate, and I always love the phrase. A South African poet, Isabel Dixon, once spoke about the Holy Trinity of South African letters. And she named the two Nobel Prize winners, James Coetzee and Nadine Gordimer from South Africa. And she also, in that Holy Trinity of South African letters, she also included Andre.
Mhm.
So he was a very significant South African writer, but also an activist who, throughout his writing life, fought against apartheid and believed in a democratic and a
Yeah,
future for
just
South.
society, like a
Yeah,
society that favors justice above
yes. That is
everything else.
democracy and includes the majority of the people who live in South Africa. And it used to be a minority rule country. And luckily, since 1994, it has transitioned to a democracy.
The emails are amazing, and like I said, over a short period of time, and we'll get a little bit of reading. But before we get to the letters, now I forgot to ask, why did you fall in love with South Africa before Andre Brink? I mean, because in your previous, and we'll jump back and forth, but in your memoir, you talk about other places. You talk about Wales, and it's a wonderful book, and I can so relate. I mean, I've been all over the world, and you connect with places in a certain way, and in your memoir it's Wales, that is important, but South Africa seems to be more important where you are now. So why?
So Pantera Północy knows how to pronounce my name because I am Polish by birth. And I grew up in Poland until I was 10, and then my parents in the late 80s, they wanted to escape the totalitarian regime of Poland of the time, and we became refugees in Austria and eventually emigrated to the United States when I was 12 years old. And then from then on, we returned to Austria, and I became an Austrian citizen, and then grew up in Austria. I'm also German speaking, and eventually, when I was studying, I ended up on an exchange year in Wales. And I've always had a love for English and American literature. And eventually, when I was thinking of a PhD topic, because I studied literary studies, I I got interested in South African literature, and I decided to write on Nadine Gordimer, so the first Nobel Prize winner for South African literature. And and then I came to South Africa for research. So it was initially stories that brought me to the country. And
Hmm.
when I first visited, I traveled around the country for a few weeks with my brother, and then stayed on to do research in several archives and libraries. And I just completely and totally fell in love with the place. And then when later that year, that was 2004, um, while I was still at the University of Salzburg in Austria, we co-organized conference to celebrate 10 years of democracy, of the South African democracy at the university. And we invited a few authors, and one of them was Andre. And I was the chosen one who went to the airport to pick him up. So I can,
In Vienna,
until,
and then you took a train ride to Salzburg,
yes,
which I don't know how long that is. It's a
three
I don't know,
hours.
3 hours, and this is amazing. Sorry to jump in here, but uh you wrote a a paper on Andre. You were aware of his work, and then you go there, and it's literally love at first sight, and it's so amazing. Uh, but I have to tell you, I thought the first thought was like, how do you know if this is really love, or if you're just so fascinated by this person that you admire so much. And as a matter of fact, in the love letters, Andre is sort of gently probing at the beginning. Are you sure you're in love with me, the boring guy who is, sitting at the computer typing, or are you in love with are you projecting something upon me? So I'm
Hmm.
wondering there, the way you describe it in the memoir is also beautiful, and there's no doubt that, and and obviously you were in love and you were together for 10 years, so there's no question. But I'm just wondering how, because I I don't know, personally I felt a feeling that I mistook for love, but it was just sort of an excitement about something. I mean, now, at the ripe age of 52, I feel like there is several times when I met someone where at the time I wrote in my journal, "Oh my God, this is it," and it wasn't it. So anyway, long-winded question. How did you know?
We didn't in the beginning. So I think there was this unbelievable excitement of meeting somebody and falling in love in a very extraordinary way, and also falling in love across all those boundaries, because it wasn't only across the continents and languages and cultures. We also had this age gap between us. But uh, what we didn't understand when we first met was how unusual it was, the way we felt about being in each other's presence, because
Hmm.
we are both quite shy people. Andre was also, even though he had this very public life and was extraordinary in it, as a private person, he was very shy, and I'm also a very typical introvert. And what we didn't realize was how unusual it was that the two of us, when we met, we just immediately started talking and felt, despite everything, very comfortable with each other. And then during the conference, we were very, very polite and very, yeah, very academic with each other. And then Andre went home, and we began this beautiful, amazing correspondence. And
Hmm.
like you said, we still didn't really know, because we just met. We spent a few hours in each other's company, but we didn't really know each other. And so these letters brought us very close, and we were very honest and revealing in them, but we still didn't know until we actually met a few months later again at
Yeah.
another conference, this time in Paris, that really, from the moment he picked me up, this time from the airport, so it was the other way around, it just felt that everything that we said in the letters was actually true, and that we could not only write it to each other but live it. And we, yeah, it was also obvious.
What this is so beautiful, and what I find fascinating also here, we're here in a virtual world, and we connect via this with the visual component, and people always talk about immersion in technology, and I dabbled in VR with the big headsets and all this technology. But reading this book with the letters, it came back to me that the letter, if it's delivered via email or in the physical realm, it is kind of secondary. Is really, you can immerse yourself into a letter, right? I mean, books, yeah, that goes without saying that we here all are lovers of books, and just that imagination where we transfer the written word into a richly textured world in our heads, that we love that. That's why we're here on the book club. But then letters, one thing before a book is total immersion. It's just amazing, right? When people talk about pixel density and 8K cameras and whatnot, and here's the letter, and the letter is bringing us closer together. Or as Andre says, in one of those, which one is it here? Let me put this slide up here. At the moment, our train glides on, and we can dream in happiness, because you both use that the metaphor of the train. Well, because you spent hours on the train, anyways.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think it was that naturalness of the conversation, that just continued in the letters. But like you said, one doesn't know and especially right now, we are in a virtual space. So we are meeting in an online space that might not be everything that it seems. And yet, because I think we wanted to really share in words what we would have shared otherwise also in person. That's
Mhm.
why those letters were so binding, and because they were so open and so honest. Then when we met in Paris, we could really just continue from there. It was only that now we were two physical people in the world who could not only talk to each other or exchange these words, but we could also hug and kiss and be together and enjoy wonderful food and wine and go places.
Mm.
And the wonderful thing about our relationship from then on was that we immediately just became these two very ordinary people who did wonderful things in the world. But for 10 years, we really were just two people who spent 24/7 together in this house that you have so beautifully recreated.
Shout
I
out to
still.
Isabel. Isabel says it. And by the way, when you just said hugs and kiss, I was informed in the back channel that your ears wiggled. So, I mean, people here know that in Second Life you can hug and kiss and drink wine and do all sorts of things, but the wiggling ears, I think, are reserved for you, Karina. So
Oh,
that's
thank you.
nice.
It was the first thing that I noticed and loved about Karina the Avatar.
What I loved about, and we're going to go to a reading in just a minute, but you used the F word in one of the interviews that our research team unearthed here, and I'm going to use the F word so that YouTube restricts the stream to 18 over. Andre was married 4 times, and here's this quote. I don't know where this is from. Shyla unearthed this in the research. He'd made a fuck up of it 4 times. Talk about marriages. I had better chances, I figured. That is actually, I love that, because you're basically, it's very kind of a logical approach. Like, he has a lot of practice. He's probably really the best husband that anybody could ever get with that kind of practice.
Uh, well, it also could have been otherwise. It could have been very scary. I think that I hope it's very clear from the letters, and I do write about it in the memoir, I always said that I was the fifth Mrs. Brink, but Andre was the second Mr. Szczurek. So
Mm.
I also was married and divorced, and he was my second husband, and that's why I said to him that my chances were better, and also I insisted that if we when we fell in love and wanted to be together, I insisted in the beginning that should there ever be marriage discussed and there should be a proposal, that it's going to be me who does the proposing.
Mm. Mm.
And I did, and luckily he said yes.
This is amazing. Now, as we're getting ready for the reading, one last little letter, or how Andre ends one of the letters. Here he writes, "I mean it when I tell you that I love you more than a Mozartkugel." Okay. Um, I'm looking at the time because there's so many other topics. I want to talk about your own publishing venture and about your own work, but we need to know what a Mozartkugel is. I know I'm putting you on the spot here. This is terrible. I couldn't. I was thinking, like, can I explain what a Mozartkugel is other than it's a kind of a famous chocolatey uh, dessert that you get in Salzburg? What is it?
Yes,
What is
that
in there?
it is exactly this. It's exactly this. It's a chocolate filled with all sorts of wonderful things, but mainly it's chocolate and a little bit of marzipan
Marzipan,
and
yeah.
and a little bit of nougat inside. No, it isn't nougat. Sorry, it's a kind of a cream. So it's this wonderful, wonderful chocolate. And Andre had an unbelievable sweet tooth. So chocolate was the one thing that he couldn't resist.
Somebody in the chat, Shaila Yoshikawa says, marzipan praline chocolate, so yummy. Okay, somebody
Mm,
put a link in there, please. Now we're going to hear from You Make Me Possible, and you will read a letter from Andre from February 2005, and then actually the last letter that is in there. Karina, perfect. You're
okay.
almost there now. You have to turn a little bit. I know this is we don't make it easy for our guests here in the Second Life Book Club. You can do
No.
this.
And I almost ran into the fire. So I suppose.
Reds don't burn that easily, I don't think. They're very hardy. I mean, at least gleaning that from your memoir. So here, you're
Uh, um,
perfect.
um,
Stand right there. It's good. It's all good. I'm gonna put the book
okay.
stand here, make it a little
Hmm.
bigger. Here we go.
Okay. So this is from one of the letters. And because all the other things that I'm going to read are my own words, I thought that I would like to share one of Andre's letters to you, and I will explain for several reasons why I chose this particular one.
Hmm.
So this was the 24th of February in 2005, about 3.5 months after we met. And it was late at night. And he writes, "Love of my life, I've just had something to eat, not having eaten all day. It was no wonder I was feeling so low. And now there is time for a letter before you come home from your own busy day. I would like to hear all about your meeting with Sonia and the visit to Salzburg. It always gives me such special happiness when I know you are going there, because of all the good things I have known there. And who knows, next time we may visit the Schloss together as its guests. I'm so happy the Vermeeren book has arrived, even though it was meant to reach you 2 days earlier. Yes, Jan is one of my very best friends, both he and his wife Christine, in fact. I've known them for 30 years now, and they are two of the best and kindest and most generous people I've ever come across. They still regularly go back to Belgium, their country of origin. And 3 years ago, we spent a wonderful holiday together in Croatia, where he had an exhibition which I opened. It was a hilarious occasion. Jan speaks a bit of Croatian, having studied there years ago, and on the day of the exhibition, he was very proud to introduce me to the crowd. I spoke, of course, in English, with a translator present. At a given moment, everybody burst out laughing, which we couldn't understand at all. Only afterwards it was explained that there are two words in Croatian which are very similar but mean totally different things. And when he thought he was saying, "my friend, the great writer," What he actually said was, "My friend, the great pisser." He is a fantastic storyteller with an amazing sense of fun and humor, which comes straight from the old Flemish painters Borges and Bruegel. And especially when he has had a few glasses, he has everybody rolling about with laughter. You will love both of them. And when you come here, they will be among the very first people you will meet. They are closer to me than family, and his blue is indeed a form of magic. I have a few of his paintings, and I know you will love them. Sometimes when I go to Paris, he asks me to bring him a tube of a particular kind of blue oil paint. I would love to see you drawings, and I would love to see you draw. I will sit very quietly in a corner and watch you, mesmerized by every movement of your lovely hand, every inclination of your head, and occasionally I may creep closer to lift your hair and kiss the nape of your neck, which I think is one of the most beautiful and vulnerable parts of a woman's body. And then I will return to my chair and continue watching, because you see, as it just happens, I'm head over heels in love with you, Karina Magdalena Szczurek, and just writing to make it to you makes all the tiredness ebb away. It has been such a frustrating day. The lecture went well, but can you imagine? Only 4 students turned up for the course, the last of my life. Apparently, there's a lot of less students in honors this year, and they have so many courses to choose from that all the seminars are empty. But it was most disappointing. Anyway, this week was just an introduction. Only next week will I have a chance of finding out how good they are. Love and love and love, your Andre.
Ah, wonderful. And now you're reading the very last letter before you guys met in Paris. That
Yes,
is from you now, yes?
this is from me, and this is after we have actually met. So this is the last letter in the book, You Make Me
Oh,
Possible,
that's right. That's after. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it is after the meeting, and it says, "My love, my only dearest Andre, here we are back in the realm of words again, but everything is different now because we know that everything is real between us. Our words are an extension of ourselves. We exist in them and through them, and we know we can do as we say." And
Ah,
I chose that particular letter because everything that Andre says about it then came into being. We did go to Salzburg together many times. We traveled there, and it was a city that not only was very special to me from the past, but also to him. And we met there, and then experienced all sorts of wonderful adventures there. And when I came to South Africa for the first time, he did introduce me to Jan and Christine. And Jan's paintings are in the house. One of them, with that magnificent and magical blue that he describes, is above my fireplace. So it is about 2 meters away from where I'm sitting in the house right now. And these two incredible people did become lovely friends of mine as well. And what he says about them, that they are more like family than friends. It is something that I experienced with a lot of the people that Andre introduced me to here in South Africa. They
this is something that actually I had this. If you want to sit back down, sorry to jump in here, but that is something I have actually on my run sheet. What I found so wonderful how there's he integrated you in his circle of friends there, and you also did that with your family. There seemed to be sort of a very natural um progression in where there was no conflict with your circle of friends and family, which everybody who has been in a relationship knows that that can be something that kills everything when when I don't know, a mother-in-law or whoever doesn't like you or wants to was envisioning somebody different or something like that, and that is so that's just a wonderful aspect of your story there.
Yes, and I can even speak about my mother-in-law, because Andre's mom was alive when I met him, and I was able to meet her. and she was very frail towards the end of her life. So there was very little possibility of really interacting with her. But I remember on one occasion when I did go and see her, she just held my hand and she looked into my eyes and she said in Afrikaans, she said "mooi," and I think it's one of the most beautiful compliments I ever got in my life. And "mooi" means just pretty.
Andre writes here, I put this slide up. He writes in one of the letters, any future is never a certainty, and the unknown always looks more adventurous and marvelous because it is unknown. But for that very reason, it can be a hellish disappointment. That's to what I said earlier, how you guys are sort of very slowly figuring out that this is real and this is not just sort of an infatuation with you with him or him with you or whatever. And this is the real thing. Now one aspect that I also love before we move on to the memoir is what becomes apparent. Actually, it also becomes apparent actually in the memoir uh, that that when a good relationship, a relationship, I think one of the factors that makes a good relationship is that you accept or maybe even start to feel an interest in an obscure hobby of your lover. In this case, it's not obscure, but you write about tennis and rugby, and I found that so funny. Like, you were not into tennis and rugby, but you find because you love that person, and that's an aspect of that person um, that that is important to that person. So I think it's wonderful to see someone express that it's part of a relationship to try to understand why that thing is so fascinating for your loved one, and then maybe you actually realize, hey, I have an interest too. But even if you don't, it doesn't matter. You show a genuine interest in that thing, right?
Yes, and I think it obviously has to work both ways. That if a hobby or a passion can be shared, it's wonderful. But if it can't be, then one also needs to respect that the other person has things that they want to experience that you might just want not want to be part of. And we were very fortunate that we enjoyed many simple things in life, and also just being in each other's company in the everyday. We were a lot at home when we were not traveling or working. We really, we went for walks, we watched TV. I find it so lovely that on that little TV screen in the room, you have old footage of a South African
Yeah.
soapy running.
Oh,
Yes,
camera, please zoom in. Explain what that is. I came across this when I was looking for Andre. What is it? He plays himself in a cameo in a soap opera or something?
yes, yes. And it is a local soap opera that continues to this day. And he was an absolute fan. So every evening he watched this religiously. And when he couldn't watch because he was traveling or working, he would record all the episodes that he was missing. And because it is originally in Afrikaans with English subtitles, it became something very special to me, because not only did I get into the storyline, but I also started understanding Afrikaans because of it. Because every single day I was watching and reading the subtitles until one day I didn't need the subtitles any longer. So 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 there
Ah,
was yeah, so there was this wonderful everyday and these simple things that we indulged in and loved doing together, and and some of them
such a
continue for
towering
me.
intellectual of watching a soap opera. I'm very impressed.
And he
Well,
loved his rugby, and he loved his tennis. He loved opera. He was one of those people, and I think this is what a lot of his friends and people who were close to me really enjoyed about his company. That he took delight in the things that he was experiencing, and he
Mhm.
never took them for granted. He just, yeah, he just loved people and life and experiences, and of course, the the one thing that he was most passionate about was language and stories.
And this is in the book, The Fifth Mrs. Brink. Did you have any weird hobbies? Because I mean, this from your point of view, we don't know. But did you have something that you thought that he may not accept? I don't know, like taxidermy, dead animals in the garage.
No, but I did introduce something into his life that he was reluctant to read or watch before, and that was all kinds of speculative and science fiction stories.
Oh,
This is something that I absolutely love, and
oh
so
yeah.
that was part of the story world that he was less reluctant to read once I introduced him to it.
See, that is good. That is good what you did there. I'm doing the same with my wife. She actually read The Three Body Problem by Xi Jing Liu. Anyways, now here, okay, so we're talking about talking
But
with yes, go
sorry
ahead.
to interrupt, but I just remembered something. Talking about speculative fiction, I remember that I saw one of your guests was Lauren Bucas
Yes.
some time ago. So Lauren used to be one of Andre's creative writing students, and her first
Oh my
novel,
God.
Moxieland, was written with his supervision. So
That
there is
is
a
amazing. I love
connection.
Maxim. That is, and you know what? And if you go outside after the show, so I just put a a glass in my hand. I just realized why not? I'm not drinking any alcohol in real life, so why not in Second Life? The Moxieland world is right next to this wonderful of your home. If we go across, we see Lauren Bucas's world that was built for the Moxie Land and then the Afterland appearance. And there's little Moxie avatars that you can get out of a machine, like a vending machine that has little
Yeah.
Moxies in it. So this is okay. So now I'm looking at the time. I'm not rushing here, but I'm so excited, and I don't want to miss talking about your work and also about the press, Caravan Press, which is very important because let me just tease this out right now. Everybody should get these books, of course. You Make Me Possible, The Fifth Mrs. Brink, and also your own debut novel, Invisible Others. But you should also head over to Caravan Press, which I will too after the show, and pick up a bunch of books there because what you're doing there is amazing. But first of all, the memoir, The Fifth Mrs. Brink, um, is amazing, and there's a lot about grief, which resonated with me. I mean, I have not lost a spouse, but lost my mother at an early age in my life, a very long time ago. And what you write about grief is quite powerful. Let me put up a slide here, and I think this is exactly the excerpt that you chose to read. But I prepared this slide because I love this, and then we'll have you read it again. It doesn't matter. But if the camera could zoom into this slide here, you write, grief is wild and unpredictable. It speaks an unknown language and renders yours inadequate. The process feels like crossing a border on a one-way ticket from a state of innocence to one of irreconcilable knowledge. Visas to that place are assigned by some obscure system nobody comprehends. It's just wonderfully written. Thank you. It's powerful.
Thank you. I wish I had didn't have to write about grief, but
Yeah.
yeah, I I felt that in I wanted to honor Andre with something that would have meant a lot to him, and so a book became the obvious choice, and I always from the moment we got married, I always teased him that if I ever write a book about us, it's going to be called The Fifth Mrs. Brink, and he always and he always thought that it was funny, and he always said, yes, of course you must, that's what it's going to be. And after he passed away, there was a sense in me that maybe the title was too frivolous, and somehow that it wasn't appropriate. But then I realized, no, but this is what I promised, and this is what was this teasing and fun between us for so many years. And so also, so the title stuck. And it was for me a difficult book to write, but also one that I am not happy to have written, but I
Mhm.
find it was important to write.
It's important. Yeah. I mean, it's important. Sometimes things are important because you know it will resonate with people. I can guarantee you that it resonate. I mean, I can assure you that it resonate with me, and I can guarantee you that it resonates with a lot of with a lot of people who read it. Um, it's powerful. Do we want to read that excerpt that you prepared?
Maybe I will just leave out the part that you read and read the beginning of it a
Yeah.
little bit earlier about language itself. So it starts with,
I will move the book stand to you that you don't have to get up all the time.
oh,
It's highly annoying. I'm sorry.
sorry, I forgot about this.
No, no.
Oh,
My producer, I mean, I have these producers that say, "Oh yeah, she needs to get up and stand there because it looks better on camera." And I say, "That's so, I mean, it's unnecessary. The guest wants to relax, wants to sit, doesn't want to jump into the fireplace, walk across the table, and things like that of that nature, right?"
well, she tried her best.
That's your next book about Second Life. A dinosaur learns how to walk. Okay, I moved the book stand in front of you. Look, this works. This works well. Here we
Thank
go.
you so much. Okay, so it moves in with you. A creature you did not invite, cannot control or tame. Grief is wild and unpredictable, at first completely inscrutable. It speaks an unknown language and renders yours inadequate. But in the beginning, there is silence. After the shattering, all languages become inadequate. You have to learn everything anew. It is impossible to speak if you cannot breathe. Widow, the first word torn out of death's ribs, the origin of my new vocabulary. The urge is to write about her in the third person. The widow, her, not me, I, no more us. The plural is reduced to singular. Possessive pronouns lose their grasp. Our slips through my fingers, however much I want to hold on to it. The finality of the past tense is devastating. Phrases like he loved, he hoped, he wanted, or he was refuse to pass my lips without wrenching my heart out of my chest with them. Death, no longer an abstraction, becomes flesh, turns to ashes. I lie awake at night, an urn next to my cold, empty bed. I lost my husband, I tell people, always adding a comment about the inadequacy of the term. It's not as if he can be found. He's not late either. He hated being late. The only things that are late are calm and food and sleep. They refuse to come. The knowledge that Andre is dead keeps them at bay. Dead. Words have so much power.
Yeah, words have power, and books have power. Thank you, Karina. Speaking of books and power, this is from your memoir as well. Books did what they are best at. Opened up vast landscapes of inquiries I wasn't even aware existed. Were you able to read um, after his passing? How long did it take you to? I hear this a lot, and I talk to people, and there is a phase that seems to be uniform where it's hard for people to engage with you know,
Yeah, with
quote
anything
unquote,
that
like
you have to.
challenge, like something
Mm,
challenging, right? Like, I mean, TV is a little bit less I don't know. How was that for you?
yeah. It was devastating because books were always the places that I turned to for comfort and solace for understanding, and suddenly my ability to read was really shattered, as I was. So for quite a while, it was a huge struggle to be able to read, and in a strange way, in comparison, this is in the beginning what lockdown did as well to me.
Mm,
South Africa experienced one of the longest, if not the longest, lockdown in the world during the pandemic. And in the first few weeks, I thought, well, here I am stuck at home. I might just as well get on with my to read pile. And it was
hmm.
also impossible to read. And after Andre's death, um, what made it even more difficult was because professionally I had to read.
Mm.
So, but it was like almost like torture to be able to focus, and I had to reread pages and paragraphs over and over again, and it took forever. Usually I just open books and devour them,
As an
and this
editor,
was.
just briefly, what were you doing professionally? You were editing, you were putting out also anthologies and stuff, or?
Yes, but this was only a few months after Andre passed away. I was
Mm.
asked to co-edit a book of short stories for the Short Story Day Africa project, which is one of the most wonderful things in my life, and I'm just delighted to be part of it. I also co-edited the latest anthology. It's a competition, an annual competition where writers from Africa can write about Africa in the way they experience the world. And it's a competition, and then 21 stories are chosen for an anthology, and a shortlist from that anthology is created, and there are prizes to be won. And many writers who get involved with Short Story Day Africa go on to do greater things. And we are delighted that, for example, one of them is now shortlisted with the story that won in the latest Short Story Day Africa anthology called Disruption, is shortlisted for the very prestigious African Cane Prize for short stories.
Mm. This is, by the
So,
way, Monkey just put that in the local chat here, your website, and all the books are on your website, karinamagdalena.com. She put that in slash all my books. It's right there on the
thank
top
you.
here.
Yes. And so back then I was asked to co-edit an anthology called Water, which is such a huge topic for the world now, but it used to be and is still such a big topic for Africa and South Africa. So it that project probably saved my sanity
Hmm.
at the time, because to immerse myself in the stories of others and to
Of others, yeah.
understand that I needed to do my work in order to make their stories shine, and to help them be the best that they can be, was a very rewarding experience, and something that kind of brought me back into the kind of life that I needed to do professionally. So stories usually save our sanity and connect us to the world, and in this case, they also did in an indirect and very direct way.
They carry a deeper truth. Fiction does. Sometimes people say fiction is just made up stuff. Well, but it's not. Actually, also here in the local chat, Stranger says he loves that you used the proper term earlier, speculative fiction,
Hmm.
as opposed to just sci-fi or another term. Um,
Hmm.
Now, you wrote your first. novel, which I unfortunately have not read, Invisible Others. I regret that. It wasn't
Don't
available.
worry.
I will
Don't
read
worry.
it. I am very worried, Karina. You know, Germans worry all the time. And German book nerds. Invisible Others, you wrote this in 2015 before he passed, during what is the subject
No,
here?
it was published a year before Andre passed away, so 2014, and and it is a story that came to me via other people, where I just wanted to understand something, as often is with writers. You observe something, you do not understand it completely, but it fascinates you, so you go into storytelling mode and invent what is possibly behind what you have witnessed. And so this particular story takes place also across continents, and some of it is set in South Africa, some of it in Paris, and it tells the story of a South African woman writer who needs to leave South Africa because of something very traumatic that happens to her here. In the beginning, we do not know what that is, and she escapes to Paris to just be free of that past that she's leaving behind. And there she meets a Polish academic who is there to do research, to work on uh, his degree, but also works in a bookshop. And he also is running away from something that is very tragic in his own past. So these two deeply damaged people meet, and this is where the title comes from. They have all these invisible others in their lives that are invisible to them, and also
Them
to each
and to the
other,
others. You're right.
and
Oh,
to the others.
this sounds delicious.
And they try to somehow meet and find each other, but of course it's very difficult with all the damage and all the traumas of the past that haunt them. And yeah, and there is I'm not, of course I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a quite an open ending to the story that puts everything upside down again. So once you
Very
reach
good.
the
Now I'm gonna read it because I hate neat endings. I hate them, hate them, hate them. People know it.
no
People know it.
until today, sometimes people just ask me, but is this what happens? And I say, well, what do you think happens?
Those are the
And then
best
they are
books.
very
Right.
annoyed with me.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting. People do want. So, would you then, when you talk with others and they say, "Oh, what's your book about?" Would you, or do you ever classify? Do you ever assign a genre to it? I find that also strange because that really, we talk about it here on the book club very often, and I understand when people go out and they go like, "Okay, it's the beach time. I want to have." A thriller. I want to have a detective thing going on with this and those parameters, right? So it's like an a la carte thing. I mean, we're kind of conditioned like that, I guess. When you go on Netflix, you're like, okay, I want this plot element and that. But I find that quite boring. But I'm wondering if you, to make it easy, or maybe to make it sell, because you're also a publisher yourself now, that you make it easy for people to say, yeah, it's a thriller with these two people. So the question is, do you assign a genre to it? Do you feel comfortable with that, or do you feel it reduces it?
I think in this particular case, I would just call it literary fiction. But I usually don't have a problem if people want to call something, I don't know, a thriller or a crime novel or chick lit. I don't usually have a problem with the term.
Bromance.
romance,
Also
and
bromance. That's with bros.
bromance,
Yeah.
wonderful. And I think that in a sense, I just love reading. So and I read extremely widely. So I am the
Hmm.
person who will read poetry in the morning and turn to a romance or a thriller in the evening, and for for pure pleasure want to read drama, for example.
Hmm.
um, so I really read everything, and I'm not snooty about also reading, or I don't think that one. It's just stories, and how they come to you is really your own choice.
Well,
Um,
sometimes the prose. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't want to make this about me, but last week we talked about the prose thing where my mom was like really hated like my fantasy stuff, my Conan the Barbarian stuff, because it's kind of one-dimensional topic-wise, but also the prose, and she wanted me to read Heinrich Böll and all the Germans, and now I love Böll. I love all these post World War II Germans, but also because the writing is just better. I'm not saying that genre writers or something that is considered pulp or whatever is always bad writing, but
mm,
anyways, I'm digging my own
yeah,
grave. Karina, help me.
not necessarily.
As an elitist, I outed myself again.
I'm immediately thinking of the one of the authors that I work with at Caravan Press. Her name is Melissa Folker, and she really considers herself as a romance writer, and
Hmm.
very proudly so. And her
That's
books
awesome.
are definitely in that category, and yet she weaves into her stories all kinds of other elements. So there are thriller elements, there are, and her main focus for these romance stories is environmental concerns. So for
Aha.
example, in her first published novel, which is called A Fractured Land, she has these two people who meet and fall in love and have all kinds of personal challenges in order to overcome in order to make that love a reality. But at the same time, the book is about fracking in South Africa, in the Karoo. And it's so beautifully woven into the romance story that you not only experience this incredible love story, but you also learn everything that you need to know about fracking, and you can decide
Karina,
for
this is
yourself.
brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is actually brilliant. You're kind of sneaking. God, you're giving me really good ideas. How you
and
sneak in the important stuff. You say, ah, this is romance. People fall in love and do all sorts of things. Here you go. And then, oh my God. Oh, wait a minute. I'm
yeah.
learning. Yes.
And she really completely goes against the bad reputation of the genre, because her writing and her prose is exquisite. So she's a really beautiful writer. And in the book that I published, the main topic, apart from the love story, is wind energy. And now she submitted another a novel to me where the main environmental topic is shark conservation.
Hmm.
And so you can kind of pick and choose, and I think that's the beauty of fictional worlds and storytelling, that you have all these elements at your disposal. And yes, you can go for one of them, but you can also um, mix and match and make choose what works best for that particular story that you want to tell. And I saw just now in the chat that somebody asked the name of the author. It's Melissa Folker, and her books are A Fractured Land and Shadow Flicker.
And Paradise, you can go on the website here, karenpress.com. I just put out here the slide in the back. These are a bunch of titles here, a bunch of covers. Shyla prepared this slide here. A Fractured Land. It's right there. It's the first image here on the slide that we have up right now on the yellow uh, cover with a drilling rig here, I guess, instead of the letter A and the globe here. let's talk before we actually go reading, because since we're on the subject, let's talk about the Caravan Press. On the website, the website states of Caravan Press, your small press. In the beginning, there were stories without homes. I began thinking of establishing an independent publishing house to offer them a literary shelter. Now, this is fantastic. How does it? When did Caravan Press start? How does it feel to run something like this? Have you created a monster that keeps you from writing? Yeah, take it where you will.
Well, I can briefly answer all of these. I hope that I will remember. It started in my head a very long time ago. I've been now in the publishing industry as a writer and as an editor for a very long time, close to 20 years. And I've from all kinds of perspectives, I witnessed how often really exquisite, amazing stories didn't get a chance in the traditional public publishing channels.
Hmm.
And I knew of a few manuscripts that were just lying around. I knew the authors, I knew the stories. I just could not understand why aren't they being published. And so all kinds of other things started happening, and I had this idea that, well, maybe I could become a publisher. Maybe I could give these stories a home. And then I read really a life-changing book by Roberto Calasso, an Italian publisher. In translation, the book is called The Art of the Publisher. And in it, he summarizes everything that I envisioned for Caravan Press, but he speaks from years and years of experience in the industry. And basically, the book confirmed to me that what I was hoping for was possible is actually possible. And so bolstered by that vision and the reality of it, that I knew that there were other people before me who were able to realize these dreams, I went into publishing. But what I did not predict was that there was going to be a pandemic.
Hmm.
And I think it was 8 months after we started that the lockdown hit. And since then, it has been really brutal. But I work, I really,
This is
I cannot,
interesting. The I know, I mean, this is something we talk about a lot. This is really kind of why we started this too, and why it was easy to get. I mean, that's what I always say. It was very easy to get very big names to come on the Second Life Book Club because they were sitting at home and they couldn't go on book tour. But I was wondering, I mean, getting anything started during a lockdown is difficult. But then I also think because I read a lot more during lockdown than I usually do, and already read all the time, but the lock, and again, every situation is different. I'm wondering, I was wondering, wouldn't people get more books during lockdown? What was the specific obstacle for you during the lockdown? Was it kind of make a meeting with people about distribution deals or with authors to sit down and talk about edits? Because isn't that stuff you could do remotely?
yes, so a lot of it was possible remotely, but in the beginning, nothing was open.
Hmm.
Everything stopped, so you couldn't even go into a bookshop. There was no distribution of books whatsoever, because they were not deemed essential, and
Oh,
also
that's right. Yeah.
the and then the bookshops themselves, in order to generate cash flow and in order to survive and to pay rent and to pay their employees, they returned a lot of the stock. And larger publishers could absorb these returns, but for somebody like me who runs everything, I'm just a one person enterprise. it was really incredible to absorb with all these books returning to the warehouse and having to pay out all that money to the bookshops again, and so to generate cash flow for a tiny press that only just started was very, very difficult, and I had to borrow money, and luckily family and friends assisted, and that's how we survived. But
See
it
how
was very,
ignorant
very
I am. I didn't
difficult.
even think about that. I'm such an ignorant reader. I thought like, okay, all these small presses are probably doing, they print on, maybe they do print on demand. We had a few print on demand people, but yeah, I mean, if you have stock and the stock gets returned from the physical store, you can't pay for it. And now I remember Matt Ruff, who was on the show 2 years ago. He said it. There was his new book came out, and even on Amazon at the time, there was 10 or 12 weeks estimated delivery domestic because it was not essential.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was a
And then,
best-selling author. Mhm. Go ahead.
uh, also in South Africa, a lot of people, also readers, went into survival mode in the sense that there were other financial priorities, and books really became luxury, and especially new books. So there was quite an interesting a twist that happened then in book selling in South Africa, where I also, from personal experience, but also just from stories from the industries, that secondhand bookshops began, not not in at first, but once the lockdown eased a little bit, and we were able to go out again and enter these spaces again. Secondhand bookshops did begin to see an uptake in book buying, and it was purely because they offered books at much lower prices, and this was
Mm.
for many people the only way to access new books because libraries were also closed. So there was a lot in the picture that was difficult to manage. But fortunately, I do work with the most wonderful writers. And I remember right in the beginning, I said to everybody, I just wrote them an email and said, look, I'm really committed to this, and I hope that we can make everything happen as we planned. But it will probably take a little bit longer, and it will require a lot of patience and kindness. And fortunately, that is what then came my way, and that's how we survived.
This is wonderful. Folks, small presses are incredibly important. Please support Caravan Press. How do we buy these books avoiding the big evil ones that I just mentioned, the A word, the ones that got bigger and absorbed like a huge, behemoth dragon and ate up all the little ones. Paradise is
Uh,
mentioning the evil Kindle, which I don't have. Um,
Well, South African books overseas are there are quite significant distribution issues. So I'm afraid for ebooks, the evil A word will probably be the only option.
or
And
I could maybe order from a local store in South Africa and have them ship it. I mean, if I absorb the shipping, that's theoretically possible. Does that make sense?
yes, and but also I've had people from around the world asking me, can we possibly just have the book sent to them overseas?
Yeah.
And that was also difficult in the beginning because our post office was completely non-functional. But now
You mean directly
it's
from you?
yes. So occasionally I will just send books into the world if somebody wants them, and yeah, but they are available via the A word.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Well, then
not.
I will contact you afterwards because it's not on the website. I mean, again, I'm not a book pro, publishing pro, or any type of pro. other than a pro host of a book program, as some people tell me. But I don't see it on the website. I wonder if I don't know, that's probably a nuisance, but if you put a shop on your website. I'm talking to an expat, American expat who lives in Slovenia, who started also in the beginning of Corona a very, very small one-person press, and he's quite successful. He just implemented a shop uh, just last week, and in the beginning he had just had his Gmail address on it and said, you know what, if you're a tech guy and you can help me put a shop in there, please contact me. And but people did buy it just through his Gmail, and then they paid it on PayPal, and then he shipped it out. And he's quite successful with some semi best-selling books there. I wonder if that's an option.
There is one book that is very easily available that I published with a UK publisher, and some of you might have heard about it because we had the unbelievable fortune that our wonderful author was last year longlisted for the Booker Prize. And this was, I think, the 10th book that I published as a publisher, and it was co-published with Holland House Books in the UK, and it was longlisted for the Booker. And the author is Karen Jennings, and the book is called An Island, and it is widely available throughout the world and now also in several other languages.
Mhm. Well, I will contact you later and then order some of these through you, or maybe the local store. This is really wonderful.
I'm also traveling to Europe in September, so
Okay,
I can
everybody here
deliver
in the
books.
audience in Europe, just DM Karina and put your shopping list, and she's gonna drive with a huge suitcase, and we'll meet at the Hauptbahnhof somewhere and exchange money for books. That would be awesome.
I always laugh that books are the only reason that I'm prepared to break my back for. So so I'm very happy to travel with them around the world.
And oh, Kitten Duo on the YouTube. Kitten Duo is a big fan. She usually watches on YouTube. Thank you, Kitten, for your support. She says this is awesome. I want her books. So Kitten, we'll be in touch, and then I'll get some books to you. Um, Thank you for your supporting the program, Kitten. This is wonderful, and I'm so inspired, Karina, with this conversation. Okay, we have 12 minutes left. Oh, yeah, we want to read. We want to read from Invisible Others. You have prepared the last reading of the day. Please do set up the story. What do we need to know? Um, and what must we not know for spoiling
Oh,
thing reasons and such?
uh, I chose it's just one scene from the book, and even though it's quite late in the book, I chose it because it's the first scene of the story that really came to me fully fledged. I just
Hmm.
saw these two people in a park, and the park is a real place in Paris, and they were in my head, and they were doing what I'm going to read now, and I just wanted to find out more about them, so I wrote a whole novel about them. And initially I wanted to write a short story, but when the short story started becoming 7,000 or I think 8,000 words, I thought, no, 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 this is probably not a short story any longer, and that's how the novel came about.
Quick question. When you say it came to you, did it come to you in a dream or these early waking hours? This is something that fascinates me also as a creative person coming from music, because that's when things happen, and a lot of authors have confirmed that. Matter of fact, Tad Williams, who was on the show, he says he writes his epic fantasy stuff, he's lying on the bed daydreaming for 4 or 5 hours, and then he just types it up. So I'm wondering, when you say it came to me, are there places or situations when things come to you? Waking
Often,
up or
as you
shower?
say, a shower definitely. I
Yep,
know specifically, for
that's what a lot
example,
of people
the
say. Mhm.
my little Rudolph, whom
Oh
you
yeah, Rudolph.
introduced in the beginning. He has his own short story, and that short story came to me in the shower.
So
Yeah.
you just ask Rudolf, do you have anything to say to me? Who is Rudolf, real quick?
Yeah, Rudolph is a little, he really is small. He is about 10 centimeters. He is like a little teddy bear who is my guardian angel, and he is always with me.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
so
and he,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
So he is a teddy bear who has wings, and yeah, and is really my lucky charm.
He's in the
So,
hallway for the people here in world. They can look at it in the hallway is a picture of him. Okay, so
yeah.
let's read.
So this is short, and it is in a park in Paris, and the park and the statue that I will describe really exists. I thought you would like it here. Come. He puts their basket on the nearest bench, but before Kara can sit down, he leads her away to a corner of the park. Kara, Karusha, he corrects himself and lets go of her elbow. This is Carolina. Kara finds herself facing a black statue of a young girl with a firm look in her stone eyes and a certain defiance in her posture. The weight of her body rests on one leg. Both her hands are carelessly placed on the curves of her small but already rounded hips, the left hand clasping one hip, the right leaning against the other with the back of her palm. With her shoulders pulled back, the young girl exposes her budding breasts without any trace of shyness or shame. Sculpted by Marcello Tomasi in 1968, Cara reads the inscription and walks around the statue, touching the fingers of the hand turned away from the body, palm up. I haven't noticed her before, she says, and continues after a brief silence. While Paris was on the barricade, Signor Tomasi was living out his sexual fantasies. She lets go of the girl's hand. I've got an idea. She moves away to search for something in the basket, finds a red apple and places it in the girl's open palm, the color of the fruit in stark contrast with the black body of the statue. Now we can call her Eve, Kara proclaims and returns to their bench to unpack the rest of the picnic. Conrad picks some magnolia petals off the ground, holds them in his fist, looking at Kara busying herself with the food he had prepared. A wonderful treat, she says, and motions for him to come over, biting into one of the other apples. Conrad releases the petals from his hand and watches the crushed flowers slowly fall through his fingers before he retrieves the apple from Carolina and joins Kara on the bench. So many things left unsaid.
And that's Karina Magdalena Szczurek reading from Invisible Others, her debut novel. Thank you, Karina. This is wonderful. This is what I'm going to read next. How did Andre support you with your own writing aspirations? What were the ways he did that? Subtle, overt?
He one of the greatest things about him as a human being and as a writer was how incredibly supportive he was to other writers, and especially emerging writers. So he always nurtured talent in whatever capacity that was possible for him. And for me personally, he was extremely supportive and very encouraging. But in the beginning of our relationship, I always thought, well, the man is in love, so obviously he likes everything that I do, and I
Yeah,
can't
yeah, because
be.
this is also really difficult in any relationship, right? I mean, you're not sure, and I think the partner sometimes is also not sure. Okay, if I overpraise it, maybe he thinks he thinks he. I'm just trying to whatever, and then if I'm too harsh, then I'm too harsh. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, but then I will never forget this. I wanted to enter a story into a competition, and so I wrote it, and I was quite proud of it. And I asked him to read it. He was always then my first reader, and then after a few minutes, he read it and he gave it back to me and said, no, don't enter this. You can do so much better than this. It's awful. And I thought, oh
Hmm.
my gosh. So he can be critical. And if he doesn't like something, he actually says it. And it was then that I realized that all the praise that I've received before was also true because he really meant it.
That's
And
it.
it was and that was the moment where it really clicked for me that he really not only loves me but treasures my writing enough to be critical about it when he thought that I could do better. And it's something that I hope that I am able to do also with the writers with whom I work as an editor or as a publisher.
Mm.
That I want to do justice to their work not only by praising it but also being honest where I think it can improve.
This is this is amazing. This is really truly a sign of a mature and 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 true relationship where you can do that, and you can critique, you can praise and critique. And like you said, if you if someone can critique, then you know the praise is also probably correct, unless that person was maybe drunk. Who knows?
Uh, it hardly ever happened to Andre. He enjoyed his wine, but it usually stopped at one or two glasses. And also, what I also very much treasured about our literary relationship was that um, he took my own opinions about his own writing very seriously.
Mm,
So even though he was this world famous author, he did listen to other people's opinions and he treasured them. And he was very open to being criticized by people whom he trusted.
mhm.
And it was a wonderful relationship of give and take also on that level.
Um, we're coming to a close in a few minutes. Monkey was asking something here. We've noticed that you've done collaborative writing. What motivates you to do that? Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Collaborative writing.
I'm not sure which project this would refer to. I have co-edited books before, so with other editors. I
I think it
cannot.
refers to the editing because I was looking over your work. I didn't see that.
mm, I don't really. I can't recall that I ever collaborated with another writer on writing. I do now, and you asked me earlier.
You're too prolific. You don't even remember what you put out, Karina. It's crazy.
Well, no, it's not. It isn't that bad. But you asked earlier, how do I publish and write? And for a very long time, I didn't write because my main focus was on the writing and publishing of other authors. But the urgency to write became so strong that I couldn't bear it any longer. And this year, I finally managed to find the time and the space to start another book, and I am very well into it now, more
Oh,
than
that's awesome.
halfway. And this is and it is in a sense. With the help of a collaboration, but not that we are writing the same text together, but a very dear friend of mine, Joanne Hitchens, who is mainly a crime writer and an editor, but also published a grief memoir with me at Caravan Press.
Mm.
I asked her whether she would simply police me in my writing. So the two of us meet to write together and collaborate in that sense. And she's working on her new book, and I'm working on mine.
I met with a prominent writer who happened to be in Munich last week. I'm not going to say it publicly, but later I will disclose it to you and the core crew. And that might be actually something for Caravan Press because she has written something about grief and her her publisher feels that that is people don't want to read that kind of stuff right now. Say the some of the people in some very prominent publishing houses. I would get mad. I would just smash the phone against the wall. But that's why I'm not a published writer.
But
But I
this
have
is
a whole
how
basement full of phones that are broken. Anyways, go ahead.
yeah, this is how independent publishers are born, when these
Yeah.
these kind of stories fall through the cracks of traditional publishing.
Well, for example, is interesting. She said she lost her son, and
Mm,
um, and she wrote about that, but she also put that into the context of the climate crisis because the son was a climate activist, and then she heard, and this is her sort of decoding this why it was rejected from 3 4 prominent publishers that she worked with in the past and where she had very success. She says that the people who are sort of looking through this, the acquisition editors or whatever they're called, they're young mothers and they say, oh my god, I don't want to read about my child dying, and that's it. So basically what this author is sort of saying in her sense, that the gatekeepers are not able to separate their own initial feelings from something that might be incredibly valuable for a wider audience. I mean, for me,
mm,
coming from the music industry is exactly the same. There's just a bunch of gatekeepers who knows how they got there, but they're there. So yeah.
mm. One of the books that I published very early at Caravan Press is a mother writing about the loss of her child. It's Sue Brown, and it's a collection of personal essays that she wrote. She wrote a memoir about the death of her son. He had a terrible brain tumor, a very unusual brain tumor, and passed away when he was, I think, 12 years old. And
Earth
she
to
wrote,
Mom, it's called Earth to Mom.
yes, and she wrote a memoir with another publisher, but then continued writing these exquisite, beautiful essays about how she felt and how the family and she as her mother and as a writer was processing this incredible loss and grief. And yeah, and I'm very proud to have published that book, and I'm so grateful to her that she came to me with these essays to share them with with us.
We gotta wrap the show so I can go shopping on caravanpress.com.
Well, we don't have a
Jesus.
shop,
No, no,
but
I
you
understand. That's why this is hint, hint. See, I'm at the same time selling, but I'm also selling to you the idea to think about maybe I should put a shop in there to counter or offset the evil the A word people over there
yeah.
with the
But then I would also have to talk to my official distributor in South
yeah.
Africa and manage that.
Yeah, but we are not. I'm not in South Africa, although I'm in virtual South Africa here in Second Life. Okay, Karina, we got to wrap this show, or my producer, who's also me, I'm slightly schizophrenic, will kill me. You recommend, in very closing, I want to briefly put this up here because I said, what book of Andre Brink should I read? To my embarrassment, I haven't read anything by him. I had a few titles, and then you recommended A Dry White Season. So everybody in the audience, after you purchase from Caravan Press through the A Word website, or you purchase the You Make Me Possible, The Fifth Mrs. Brink, and Invisible Others. Once you've done all this, then you got to go and get a book by Andre Brink and possibly A Dry White Season. It is just incredible. It's a book from 1979. It's not based, but it's inspired. His motivation to write it was the Soweto riots, 1976. There's a movie who I haven't watched. It seems that the movie is actually quite good. I try to stay away from movies after books, but this movie looks good. The actors look great. Yusan Palsi, a female director from where's she from? From Martinique.
Yes.
So this is somebody who is has a cultural a connection to these issues. So it's probably a good film, but the book is probably better. Book is always better. Okay, Karina, thank you so much for coming. I hope you had a good time, and we're really thrilled to have you here. And of course, your world will stay. The house will stay. It will not go away. the books will stay here. People will able to wander around, click on those books, find your information, maybe meet you, or maybe start a conversation. Um, there's also a framed picture here on the wall that Isabel prepared with a quote from A Dry White Season. One of the characters, Paul Brewer, retired philosophy professor, says in the book, there are only two kinds of madness one should guard against. One is the belief that we can do everything. The other is the belief that we can do nothing. There we go. Just wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank
Karina,
you. It was a really exciting experience, and I hope to return also as
you
a reader only.
you will return as a reader, you will return as a writer, you will return as a little rat, not a bowl of soup. Here's the last quote from the fifth Mrs. Brink. Love is fleeting, literature is everlasting. Okay? So if you want to break up with your with your loved one, I should wrap the show before my stupid jokes come in at the very end. Um, this is the Second Life Book Club here on Second Life Island 1 or 2 or 3. And we are here every Wednesday. I'm going to run through the credits real quick. Every Wednesday, 12 o'clock. The email is slbookclub@draxtor.com for suggestions of authors. Please give me a little time to respond. Show is produced by Isabel Sharon, Shyla the Super Gecko, and myself. The avatar maker master maker is Ruby Geek. She is not with us. She is in transit somewhere between Spain and the UK. This avatar was made by Bespoke Caravan, custom made. Um, Thank you, Bespoke folks. The research is by Shyla the Super Gecko and Monkey. Oh, this is the wrong slide where Monkey is not credited. Too bad. I apologize. Here we go. We have a whole bunch of sponsors, which means that we get their stuff and we can use it to build our sets. There is no tip jar today. If you would like to tip the staff, please send it directly to, how should we do this? If you are a big fan of this show and you want to tip Ruby, Tyler, Monkey, please go to a different location. Actually, you can go across the street to Lauren Buca's set. There is still a tip jar over there, and you can put your Linden dollars into the tip jar over there. Next week we have author from India, Tashan Mehta, whose book debut novel is A Liar's Weave, and she also has a whole bunch of short stories. Um, I don't know anything about her other than that I'm totally thrilled to dive into her work. And yeah, I'll see you all next week right here on the Second Life Book Club. Goodbye.